that were not specifically designed to dogfight. All of that had changed by 1990.
By 1990, with the Gulf War, the Air Force and the Navy had advanced on two fronts. One is they had advanced new fighters like the F-15 Air Superiority Fighter and the F-14 Interceptor Fighter. In addition, they had much better weapons. The Sparrow had improved, the Sidewinder had improved, and the pilot training had considerably improved.
When Saddam Hussein seized Kuwait on August 2nd, 1990, and the drums of war began to beat, American air power faced its greatest threat in decades.
The Iraqis had MiG-29 interceptors, they had MiG-23s, they had French F-1s, and pilots and ground commanders had experience fighting with the Iranians. Thus, the U.S. really organized in a way to create an overkill situation where we had to use all of our assets against a prepared adversary.
Electronic warfare aircraft could block enemy radars and clear corridors of attack for bombers, whose precision-guided munitions could take out command control centers and anti-aircraft defenses. AWACS could monitor the situation, calling out any airborne enemy aircraft to American fighters who could take them on. Tankers could feed the beast, keeping the entire war machine flying for hours on end. Such combined force was championed by Air Force fighter pilot and strategist Colonel John Boyd, who created a concept explaining how Allied energy should be used to defeat the enemy and survive, collectively known as the OODA Loop.
The OODA Loop stands for Observation, Orientation, Decision, and Action. What it really means is that you outthink and outact the adversary by knowing more, by destroying his capability to think at the same level that you are. What does this mean for warfare? What it means is if you can go out on the first night of the Gulf War and you can destroy by actively bombing or jamming the Iraqi radars, and then you can actually bomb and destroy their command and control centers, and you can scare the hell out of the commanders that do survive by blowing up his center and by disrupting it, that is what the OODA Loop means. You have scared the enemy, or you have destroyed his radars, and you've destroyed his capability to react.
The extraordinary use of Allied air power on January 17th works exactly as planned. Air Force and Navy planes have disrupted the Iraqis' ability to gather information and make decisions. 8 of their best fighter aircraft have been destroyed. Radar stations, command and control centers, and surface-to-air missile sites have been reduced to rubble. But as the war goes on, the Iraqi defense stiffens. More fighters rise to challenge the Americans. On January 19th, F-15 Eagle pilot Larry Pitts will go head-to-head with some of the best pilots in the Iraqi Air Force in one of the most thrilling dogfights of the Gulf War. January 19th, 1991. 4 F-15C Eagles soar high above a cloud deck that obscures the desert sands of western Iraq. Captains Rick Tolini and Larry Pitts are number 1 and 2 in the 4-ship flight, providing escort to a massive coalition strike package.
Well, as it turned out, just as we were finishing up our refueling, the AWACS called out, at that time, bogies approximately 60 to 80 miles north of us.
The 4 Eagles break off to engage the threat. Within seconds, they have multiple radar contacts.
I saw 2 groups of airplanes, one straight in front of us, which had been called out as MiG-25s at about 10,000 feet heading straight south, and another group about 30 degrees right of us at about 50 miles, which had been called out as MiG-29s, and they were also heading at us. So they were heading south-southwest.
The MiG-29s are closer and present the greatest threat. Pitts targets the 29s until the bandits surprise him.
They turned around and started heading back towards Baghdad. So they turned cold, which meant they were no longer a threat to us at that point. So my radar work went back to the group of MiG-25s who were right in front of us.
The MiG-25 Foxbat is a very high-speed interceptor, capable of Mach 2.83. It was designed to catch up to even the fastest American aircraft and take them down with radar-guided or infrared missiles. The F-15C Eagle is the premier air superiority fighter in the U.S. Air Force arsenal. A mixture of unprecedented maneuverability and acceleration, range, weapons, and avionics. The MiG has the edge in raw speed, but the Eagle's weapons, radar, and agility far outclass the Foxbat. At 25 miles, the Americans use their radar to lock the MiG-25s up. But these Iraqi pilots are skilled and aggressive.
The MiG-25s actually executed a Soviet-based anti-Eagle radar tactic.
The MiG pilot spits out chaff to cloak his maneuvering as he dives low to blend in with ground reflections.
They turned directly to the west and went down very low and actually broke our radar locks, and we lost them for a little while.
But abruptly, one of the MiG-25s turns back into the Americans.
The MiG-25 turns back in, which is the tactic, hoping he'll see us before we see him.
And just then, the second MiG-25 gets Pitts' attention. Pitts is here on the far right side of the American flight. The MiG-25 is here, passing across his nose at supersonic speed along the desert floor. Pitts locks the bandit up and waits for the okay from flight lead Rick Tolini before he presses the attack.
He could say press, cleared, or negative. What he said was press, which means now he's going to support me, and I can consider myself the flight lead and not to worry about him. I roll inverted and do a split S maneuver from 10,000 feet.
Pitts' maneuver will position him at the same level and behind his enemy. The perfect position for a missile shot. But it's a risky move. Pitts pulls an astonishing 12 Gs. The force takes man and machine to the absolute limits of survival.
Well, obviously the integrity of the airplane is a big concern, but I'll tell you, the Eagle's very strong. And trust me, there was enough adrenaline flow in there that it didn't even faze me.
For the first time, the American pilot spots his prey.
As I pull down, that's when I get the tally-ho on the MiG-25. And there's still that low cloud deck down there, so I can see him on top of that cloud deck.
If the MiG-25 pilot lights the afterburners and accelerates straight ahead, he could outrun Pitts. But the Iraqi decides to enter a turning fight with his much more agile opponent.
He's a MiG-25 doing 700 knots. His turn radius is the size of Texas. I'm in an F-15 at fighting airspeed in the mid-400s. My turn radius is about 3,200 feet. So I'm very quickly inside of his turn. Before he completes the 180 degrees of turn, I'm in weapons parameters.
The desperate Iraqi leans hard on the stick.
He's turning very hard to try to defeat me, which means he's bleeding off quite a bit of airspeed.
Pitts closes to within 9,000 feet, carefully selecting his weapon.
Because of the big burner plume coming out of the airplane, I chose to select a heat-seeking missile, an AIM-9 Sidewinder. When I selected that missile, I got a good tone from it. I uncaged it to make sure the seeker is tracking his burner plume.
But the Iraqi pilot is well versed in countermeasures.
The missile tracks true to the target, and the MiG-25 puts out flares and decoys the missile. I had a backup. I selected AIM-7 because it's radar guided. I see it in the heads-up display as a big circle. It's telling me to shoot, 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 which means it's in weapons parameter. So I launched this missile.
The Sparrow guides to the target, but fails to explode. So Pitts goes to a second heat seeker. The Iraqi decoys the missile with another batch of flares. Captain Pitts may have met his match.
This guy is fighting hard. And I'm thinking to myself, if the missiles aren't going to work, I'm going to have to go gun this guy. Which is not an easy solution when he's at 300 feet doing 500 knots and not in a turn.
Pitts unleashes his last AIM-7. This one has got to work.
And I fire the missile from 6,000 feet behind him, and it looks to me like it goes right up his tailpipes and blows up the back end of his airplane.